Welcome, Danielle, to the Sacred Roots podcast. I am so excited to have you today on the podcast. Why don't you take a moment to introduce yourself and tell our listeners what you're doing?
My name is Danielle Searancke. People also know me as the Squamish Medium. I am Swampy Cree First Nations with proud membership of York Factory First Nation. So I am a settler here on the unceded and traditional territories of the Squamish Nation. It's where I live, work, and play. I serve humanity through my mothering of my two children, through helping people find their spirits within and hear the call of the spirit world and how we're meant to serve and share that light. So I hold space for many people in many different ways, but it came to me through the art of mediumship. So that seems to be where my main passion and focus is.
Hmm. And we're going to dive into that today because I have lots of very interesting questions I want to ask you, and I know our listeners are going to love it. So, I love how you said I I don't know exactly how you worded, but I'm my service into first mothering my two children. And I find that so important because we have a tendency to separate work and life, whereas really it's the same. And if we can bring awakened and conscious beings to the earth, it's I think the greatest gift we can do to the earth. So thank you for voicing it that way because so many of the people that follow me are mothers too, and I know that really is going to resonate with them.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of my abilities came through becoming a mother. So
Well,
yeah.
tell us about that. Tell us a bit about your journey. How did you open up to mediumship? Was it something that was there since you were a child, or did it come when you get pregnant or when you became a mother? Tell us about your journey.
Yeah, it's quite a long story, but the truth is, looking back with hindsight and the gift of hindsight, mediumship has always been in my awareness from my
Hmm.
earliest memories. Sharing a room with my brother, he was very psychic. He could see spirit. I used to think he was teasing me, but now I know he wasn't. And I was terrified as a child. And, I ended up as a paranormal investigator in my late teens and early 20s with Vancouver Paranormal. So a lot of my spirituality gateways was through paranormal, which when we look at spiritual maturity, that's the case for so many of us. It's like, what are ghosts? What happens to us when we die? So I've been on that quest since I was quite young. I used to pay to see mediums when I was like 15, 16, 17. Saw Sylvia Brown in Vancouver in the 90s, at UBC. So it's always been in my awareness and it's always been something that I have been interested in, but it was not until my birth of my child that I found myself on maternity leave, which we get in Canada, a year off, which I'd never had in my life. I'd been working and earning money since I was like 9 or 10. And then I find myself in a government job where I get a year off and I had a baby, and babies don't do a whole lot when they're first born. Like they do sleep a lot, and I didn't know what to do with all this time, to be honest with you. And I know that sounds backwards, and it got busier as the babies got busier, right? Then life got really, really busy. But those first 6 months, it was like me and her, and I ended up getting a ticket to see a medium in Squamish do a big group reading. And I'd seen that stuff on TV, but I was like, oh, it's like here. So I went to that event, and it really changed my life watching her work. And I got a contact that day. And my friend who was watching my baby, she heard how impactful the reader was for me, and she got me a private reading with her. So it
Hmm.
was in that private reading that she was probably the sixth medium since I was a teenager to say, you could do this and I'll be getting readings with you one day. And I honestly, just the skeptical side of me thought people were just trying to like sell courses to me. And I was like, yeah, yeah, you probably say that to everyone. And I just never believed it. I never believed it. And, I never had a lot of money for that kind of stuff either. Like even buying readings was a huge investment for me. And, I just really resonated with this woman, and she gave me a really life-changing reading. And I held on to everything that she said, and everything she said completely changed the landscape of my life. So I found myself in this moment of time where I had time to myself for the first time in my entire life. I had this new journey of being a mom, which was like really hard for me to kind of like ease into. It wasn't the easiest transition for me, because I really did love my career because I was working in First Nations healthcare and First Nations health and wellness, and I was reconnecting to my culture in beautiful ways that were just filling a part of my soul that it was hard for me to leave work for a year because that's what I got to do at work. And so I was also feeling with like this intense loneliness.
Mm,
And because I'd been so career focused my whole life, I didn't have friends in Squamish. I didn't have
mm,
any other friends who were moms. I didn't, I worked with a race car team when I moved here. So all I had was my race car friends who were all men. None of them were parents. Like we obviously lost touch. And so everything about this time in my life was just so new.
yeah.
So it was just kind of a time in my life where I was so tired and like open that I just said yes to things. So I said, yes, I'll join your class. But I was too nervous to sign up for her mediumship class. So I signed up for her intuitive class because I was like, no, 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 I'm not a medium. My response actually specifically was angels wouldn't speak to me because of
Mm,
my, so worthiness was a huge learning for me in the path of mediumship, right? To become a clear channel. So
mhm.
in that first development class, only me and one other person showed up. And she's like, I just want to try something. She's like, Danielle, just close your eyes and tell me what you see. And immediately just a few things came through and a knowing. I was like, I know there's a boy here named Dustin who's 18. And this woman like grabbed me. She like grasped and like she grabbed me. And she said, my son Justin, who is 18, just passed away.
Mm,
And I was like, oh, what just happened? And like her grief shook me because I'd never been face to face with a mom who had had a loss like that either.
of
And there's no
course.
bigger loss in the world than that.
Yeah.
So in this like instantaneous multidimensional moment, I sensed the gravity of this work. I realized I didn't understand grief because what I experienced in that moment with her was so raw,
Hmm.
right? Rawer than anything else I'd really seen. And this fascination and this calling kind of came in at the same time. And the truth is, I got too scared to say anything else. And so the severed, the connection kind of severed for me because I got scared, which always severs spiritual connection, fear. And I didn't know what happened. I didn't know how I got that because my teacher said to see, but I didn't see it. Right. And so she moved me to the mediumship class right away.
Of course.
And I remember driving home that day because I would travel to White Rock from Squamish to go to these classes, which is like, 350-kilometer round trip through like 4 cities. And I remember just like speaking to spirit on my way home. And I just said, I can see how you have been bringing this path to me for a long
Mm,
time. And I made a declaration on that car ride home. And I said, I'm never leaving this path again. I am going to understand what this is, and I am going to serve however you shall have me serve. And this is my path from here on out. And that has been since that day. It was 2013. I have never wavered from the path. It's been my path. And yeah, I mean, there's so much more to talk about because a lot's happened since 2013, obviously. But that's,
yeah.
I took my development really seriously because I had that first experience with grief. Um, I was scared of so many things. So I developed for 4 years before I even considered charging anyone or really opening myself up to the public. So I spent 4 years like in circle every week, like developing as much as I could, like practicing as much as I could. And because mediumship wasn't easy for me, I got to know it in a very nuanced, detailed way. And I'm also a Virgo.
Mm,
So like what I'm known for is the ability to break down the art of mediumship in a really practical human way for people.
yeah.
Because that was my experience with it. But that's kind of how it came to my awareness.
I love that. What a story. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah.
So many questions I want to ask you. You shared something that I find very fascinating. You said how you had, a wound around not feeling worthy and how that was really getting in the way of your expressing your gift. Can you expand a bit more?
Yeah, it still does. I mean, fear is just a natural part of the human experience. It's part of the ancient part of our brain. All the unconscious healing we have to do, all the intergenerational healing we have to do. And, I'm an intergenerational residential school survivor, only the second in my family out of the schools. So the
Wow.
fear is real, like it's tangible, it's real, the things that we have to heal when we're healing that wound that's very new and very fresh. So fear is just something I had to walk alongside. And that worthiness is something that still continues for me today when I continue to get opportunities that, I reject right away. My instinct, my nature is to be like, no, 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 no. Like it's just my nature. And then I have to kind of open up my perspective to be like, no, of course this is coming your way. Like, look, you've been dedicated to this for 11 years. Of course
Yeah,
people are
yeah,
starting to notice. Like,
yeah.
it's been a beautiful healing journey, learning trauma-informed care, like self-compassion practices to be able to widen my perspectives. And, that's kind of I teach mediumship through a personal development lens because it is about being a clear channel. The world of spirit and the language of spirit is our natural language,
Yeah.
right? It's the conditioning of the human experience that we have to open and shed away to become a clear channel for spirit. So, my students have other things that they're working through. The things that I've had to work through is fear around being visible, around being critiqued, around being wrong, around feeling worthy because, I've had a really colorful life. I'm not religious. I don't have a spiritual background before I stepped into mediumship. I worked with race cars, like it's like who am I? Who am I to be able to like be a voice? So there was a lot of that. I suppose I had kind of a vision that a lot of other people had that like these gurus are born knowing that this is them when really the spiritual path is a remembrance, isn't it? And we remember at different times of our lives. And it's just
Yeah.
when I happen to remember. And I'm always forgetting and remembering, just like everyone else.
Hmm. Because we're humans.
Yeah. And this veil is here for a reason.
Mhm, mhm. Um, so it's so fascinating to understand, the background that you come from and how you said I didn't come from a religious or a spiritual background, and then this is now my whole life. You did share at some point that you were in your car coming back from the class and you understood, okay, this is my path. Thank you, Spirit. I will devote myself to it. So you already had a relationship with Spirit. You were already in conversation with him, her. How has that begun for you? And what is your relationship now?
Oh my goodness. This is such a big question. I've never been
Yes.
asked that because I was born with this knowing I wasn't alone. It could have been the
Mm,
fact that my brother, when we shared a room, would say, "Do you not see grandma standing there?" I was like, "No." And like I would hide under the blankets and I would speak to her saying, "Grandma, like, okay, you're here. I don't want to see you." Which is funny because in my mediumship, my vision came last because it was the
mm.
thing that I wished away so early. So I
Yeah.
suppose like in those really early days, and then I went through like a really traumatic abusive experience. And I remember the first instinct was to pray to my ancestors. It's just been like my nature and my instinct. And I've lived a very lonely life, like a very lonely life. I don't know how else to describe it because a lot of the focus growing up was on my brother who struggled with opioid addictions when I was a young kid. So, a lot of the family like effort and resources was around him. So I kind of like raised myself, championed myself, talked to myself. So a lot of my childhood was my mind and my imagination and my inner dialogue, which is a double-edged sword in truth when it comes to like mediumship and the busyness of the mind. But I remember a lot of times as a kid, and when I realized spirit communication, so much of it, actually, I would argue almost all of it is a transfer of thought. I started to realize, wow, I wasn't talking to myself so many times.
Mm.
And it was actually this moment in my van, my minivan. I swear I used to call myself the minivan medium because so much happens in my minivan and I still have it. But I was like driving in my car one day and like this thought popped in my head, oh, there's a lot of police out here today. And I remember responding to the thought, and I was in my mediumship journey for like 5 years at this time. And I was like, no, there isn't. And I turned the corner and the whole street is barricaded off by like SWAT and police and we had to get diverted. And I remember that was the first time I asked, which is awareness, who said that? right? Because in my mediumship, I've been trying to see because my teacher saw and I couldn't
Hmm.
see. So I questioned everything because I couldn't see.
Yeah.
And I couldn't realize that was so much easier than seeing.
Yeah.
It's literally a transfer of thought. And I just didn't understand that till that moment. It was that moment when that thought came through. My whole childhood flashed before my eyes and I remember having conversations with myself and I would start laughing and my mom would say things like, and I'm not to shit on my mom, she's lovely and I live with her and we're great, but she would say things like, oh, be mindful of how much you think about yourself and kind of saying like you're egotistical if you think about yourself and selfish and self-centered. And so I used to have a lot of shame around that, how much I think inside, but the truth
Hmm.
is it's become a superpower in my mediumship. And so, that coupled with just this innate natural faith, I have more faith in the spirit world than anything I see here. Like,
I love
and I
that.
was born with that. I was born with that. Yeah.
I love that. So, as a medium, what is your morning practice that helps you? I guess you are constantly in that connection with spirit. Do you
Yeah.
have to put yourself into that state, or is it just a way of being and you don't really have a morning practice as a result?
I say I have practices. So Spirit said to me once, because I used to be like, I feel like I should have more practice. And like, I feel like I should be like doing stuff, right? But Spirit said to me, they said, the rituals are not how you access us, but it's how you can feel the access with us, right? So they explained to me, like, you
Mm,
bring in ritual when you need to feel that connection, when you need something tangible. It's not how you connect us, but it's one way to get to the state to connect with us.
I love
And
that.
I think my own ritual has been, again, just talking to spirit. It's so natural for me. And so I have practices in my life when I feel that disengagement. I don't say disconnected. I don't believe we're ever disconnected, but I feel that we're disengaged from our spiritual sources sometimes. And they're always there, but our aura kind of collapses in. So how do I open up my aura? One, serve. That's like one of the best ways, but sometimes I'm not in a state. It's healthy for me to serve, right? Like I might do more damage to myself or other people. Like I have to get right. So one of the ways that I bring in ritual and ceremony is to kind of get back in congruence with, my spiritual self. And so the rituals for me are for times for that. But I really do live a spiritual life in the way that I always feel in connection and commune with the spirit world. I feel like in some ways I'm always conversing and connected with them through my heart mind, and I can
Hmm.
feel it. And I never feel alone in that sense. In that sense, I'm never, 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 never alone. So yeah, I just naturally talk to them all the time. And sometimes I hear back, and most of the time I don't. Um, but it's cool with me. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. We are hearing so many people, or much more people now waking up to mediumship, suddenly hearing things, feeling things, seeing things. Why do you think that is?
Oh my goodness. So I agree. I agree. Even 2013, when I started developing, it was not as mainstream as it is now, like at all. Like I didn't even know you could develop online until people asked me through my podcast to teach online in 2020. I was like, oh, I don't know. Like, we'll try it. We'll see what happens. I used to drive literally like 3,000 kilometers a month for my training. You know what I mean? Like that's the
Yeah.
devotion and dedication that I had. So the truth of the matter is I believe, and there's an amazing podcast that just got released in November, the telepathy tapes, which I think kind of is a really good example of the collective awakening that is happening and how it really exemplifies that the future of communication, because our communication has changed with every generation, hasn't it? Right?
So
Like, and
much.
it's changing at lightning speed. And the future of our collective communication with one another will be telepathic,
Yeah, I
which
was
is
gonna
how,
say that
right?
too.
Yeah, and it's telepathic and we have to get right with our own thoughts before we can let people safely in to our thoughts. And so I think that that's where we're in a time of great healing. I love the teachings of Caroline Myss, and she talks about, you know, our world really shifted with the creation of the nuclear bomb because we created something that we can't outlive. And we never had in a vocabulary before that creation, self-esteem. and we've never had that language before. And so it really ignited a time of self-discovery, self-healing, self-esteem to get to that inner light, to share that inner light. That wasn't our vocabulary before. That wasn't our mission, but it seems to be the mission since we created something. Isn't this kind of like Atlantis, the lore of
Hmm.
Atlantis all over again?
Yeah.
Creating something that can self-destruct.
Yeah.
And are we going to repeat the same patterns, right? And so I think so many more people are waking up because we've reached that point of no return, right? And we've reached that point, and I know we have. And I know that the future is really our free will, what we make of it collectively. So more and more of us are really waking up because we know that it's more important than ever that we do.
Mhm.
Right. And so that's how come a lot of my work has been through spirit school, not Squamish Medium, because I know that the impact I make through having people remember their light and whatever they do with it is their mission. That's their path. I don't tell them what to do with it. But if I could just guide them to it consistently, they'll do what they're meant to do with it and what they want to do with it. But in my membership, about a quarter of the people are mediums. Most of them are like animal communicators, human design readers. Like they're just sharing the light how they want to share their light. It's just about the light, like you started the prayer here. So, I think there's a lot of things happening at once, but like lightning speed from the age of Aquarius, which was November, right? We're entering the cycle that goes until 2038. It is literally the age of light and telepathic communication. So mediumship is a surefire way to reach the light because you have
Yeah.
to reach the light within, the light of your sitter and the light of the spirit world. I mean, I could teach people how to be human through mediumship, like how to be like a walk and breathe and amazing human. That's how multifaceted and dimensional mediumship is. And
Yeah.
every
Yeah.
single person on the planet has a need for mediumship because all of us are going to experience loss.
Mm. And mediumship helps us see that there's no real death.
Yeah, it's like another dimension, really.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Just curious, what is your timeline? What do you see in the amount of time, years that it will take for us all to be telepathic and to stop communicating with our phones and instead with our hearts?
I think the phones have something to do with I think it was beneficial for the speediness of the change that needed to happen,
Yeah, yeah,
in a lot of good ways too. But I think, I go back to some of these teachings. I've never taught about this kind of stuff because it's kind of language that doesn't always resonate with me. But when we think about the indigos, the crystals, and the rainbows, right? We think about this thought of generations coming through to pave the way for others. It's very clear that the path is getting wider.
yeah,
But
yeah,
if we look back even only one or two generations, it's quite narrow, isn't it? So kudos to our ancestors and the ones that were brave enough to look in their hearts, lean into compassion, break away from certain molds that we know are currently dying.
yeah,
We're witnessing a mass death right now of like, the way things are happening and the way things have been. And that's necessary and so uncomfortable, but all change is uncomfortable.
yeah, yeah.
So I feel that we are a cohort that has widened the path. And I think it really is undetermined when we get to where we go because Spirit told me in 2020, like with the pandemic and all these things happening, everything is people's divine free will and how they exercise that. An accumulation of that because of the divine law of the compound effect will navigate the future.
Mm,
So it's up to everybody's individual free will choice. I mean, that's what Caroline May says. Your quality of life is only as good as the quality of your choices that you make. We have to really start empowering people to make conscious, sovereign choices and decisions. And that's also how come this structure is falling because we haven't had that freedom before. But I think in our generation, I feel like we've accomplished a lot. In my own personal life, my life exceeded all expectations 6 years ago. So everything is cherry on the top for me now, like everything. So that's kind of how I see life and that's how I see our future. It really is a choose your own adventure book. Remember those in school? Like, ooh, do you want to go to chapter 3 or do you want to go to chapter 5? Like, oh, it's so hard to make this choice, but I have to make it. And in truth, if we want to get super woo, I think we're making all choices in all timelines and we're playing it out in some way, space, or fear. And that's sphere. And that's a big thought that I can't even explain, but just make good choices, people.
Yeah.
Don't make
Basically,
my
that's it.
choices. Just make good choices.
I'm hearing in the things that you're sharing that so sometimes you do receive messages from the people who have passed across the veil, but you also receive messages from spirit for the collective and I guess personal messages as well. Um, do you feel that there's like a proportional like spread of these kinds of messages, or it depends of the situation? How does it
Yeah.
work for you?
Well, there's one thing I love to teach is, well, the organic nature of spirit, but also the divine helpers that we have, because there are so many and they all have different things. Like I think about myself, and if I died tomorrow, like Andrea, who's helped me build spirit school from nothing to something big, I would give it to her and I would definitely be inspiring her on the moves to make, right? Like I would be on the other side, like, so then I would probably be seen as like an aspirer, right? It's like, I want to inspire you. And I have inspirers that work with me in mediumship. I have inspirers. I have inspirers that help me with my podcasting and speaking and my writing. And they're not guides to me. Like Skylar's like been with me forever. And I have one Veroness and I have one, um, Jay, I just call him Jay, but there's like 3 that I know have been with me forever. And then most of the spirit communicators that come through me are inspirers because most of my career, my body of work is inspired speaking. And so that's the spirit realm that mostly works through me. And when I'm activating in my mediumship, it's the ancestral realm, right? And they're not dimensional in the sense where it's like layers and hierarchies. They just have different things to share. And so I will call in inspirers when I'm podcasting or when I'm teaching, and I will call in my guides when I'm like, fucking hell, like I need, I need something here. Like you got to give me something. They're kind of like my Hail Marys, right? Like help me off this timeline. Like how are we getting off this? And then I bring in my ancestors when I'm doing my human work, and I'm like, I know this is you, Grandma. I know you left me with this. Like, and I know you
Mm,
have a different vantage point now. So like, what are we doing? Like inspire me. And, I think about the animal realm, which are very much equal to the angelic realm to me. And I don't talk about it very much, but the angelic realm is probably the most prevalent beings that are always around me. And they make appearances in crazy ways around me. But I can't channel them. They don't speak to me. They're the beings who move the healing energy through me. That's the intangible thing
mm,
that people experience in my presence, but people don't know what it is. And that's the angels at play, but they only move energy through me. They said that I'm like a clear quartz crystal that just amplifies their energy because I've always been in my heart. And so, yeah, that the angels are around me more than anyone else, but I've only heard them once. And it was November 2023. I had a crazy experience and it was the angel of compassion that came through. And then the whole next year, my whole body of work was centered around compassion. And so
mm.
obviously the angel of compassion was moving through me. And then what do we see now? An overwhelming world where lack of compassion is existing. So when we look at what I'm doing with rematriating mediumship and I'm restoring balance, it's like I feel like I'm a balance restorer in some ways, right? Like this is happening over here. I'm going to bring more light and love. I know this sounds so woo-woo, but it's like I'm going to bring in more light. I'm going to bring through more healing in more ways. How can I serve? And that's just how I bring about a little bit more balance. So yeah, a lot of different types of spirits come through me.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I love that. When we had a chat a few weeks now, it's about 2 months ago. Time goes by so fast. You mentioned that there's mediumship is usually taught in a bit of a masculine way, and that you have a more feminine approach. And then you were also mentioning the differences between the Western way of doing mediumship and indigenous way. Let's dive into that. Tell us more about that.
Yeah. So what we see with mediumship today, which is called mental mediumship in some communities, evidential mediumship in other communities. And it's very much structured around this way of mediumship that is called spiritualism, which actually ended up becoming a religion, which was my first red flag when I got into it. But the style of mediumship, I personally did pretty well under. But when I even look at my astrology, my masculine and feminine planets are completely balanced, 5 and 5. So it's like people, when they meet me and they see how well I do in business, but then also how well I do in my mediumship, one is very masculine, one is very feminine. It's like I do both really well. So I'm somebody who I think can be balanced pretty well between both. But one thing that I recognized as a teacher, how many students struggled with this really patriarchal masculine way that is presented through spiritualism around how to be a medium, access mediumship, and serve the spirit world. And it's very much in a line. And it's very much, when I feel into it, it's like steps and ladders. So it's like, first you do this, then you do this, then you do this. And that works for some people, but not everyone. So it's almost like the way of mediumship became either you fit within this or you don't fit, right? And then the critique comes in. Anyone who serves outside of that kind of structure was very heavily critiqued within that structure. So then this culture was created of like maybe envy, maybe elitism, and it's so common that like my old mentor, who was a very famous spiritualist, wrote poems about it. So I'm not talking about something that's like not exposed, but nobody talks about it, but everyone feels it, right? So then I'm not someone who calls out things. I mean, I am now because I'm writing a book on it, but I decided to restore balance in my own way by just teaching it differently, right? Like really, spiritualism focuses so heavily on your output and what you can produce, which is very masculine, right? It's like, what can you produce? And you're only as good collectively if you can get X, 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 X. So there's this list that no one can produce. But if you're not measured up to it, it's like you don't fit, right? Or you're just like, they put a pat on your head, like, oh, you just go off and do your little thing over there, right? And that's very much the culture that it is. And so I found that the spirit communication was very different every time. It was as different as we are humans. It was different as all of our fingerprints and as above, so below. It's like there's so many examples in the natural world that nothing is the same. So why are we trying to teach everybody like it's the same? And when I look at Mother Earth and the natural world and the organic nature that is both chaotic yet organized, it's like mediumship is a bit like that too. And that's the feminine energy, is that chaos and that like, just more organic and just going with the flow, right? Like it's flowy. And what spiritualism didn't teach me, and maybe every teacher is a little bit different, was around how important space holding is. How important it is to hold space for people who are grieving. And there was no emphasis on the damage that you can do with how you present certain information. Right? And I learned that because I got trauma informed working with residential school survivors, and they didn't have that training. But there's a book and there's a religion and there's a college, and it's like, it's very overwhelming. And I personally, because my guides kept me far away, I've never been in a spiritualist church. I said, hey, there's a church for mediums. I have to go, because I also wanted to be a theologian. And that I will die with a theology master degree. It's like, that's just a life goal of mine. I was like, but there's a church for mediums. And they're like, no, 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 no. And I didn't realize that they needed me to develop and teach in a very different way. And that brought a lot of insecurities for me, because I had to sit with so much not enoughness and worthiness, because I was saying things that they weren't saying. I didn't fit. And I got oh, you cute little, you don't teach them sitting in the power, And I'm like, no, because guess what? Neurospices, it's so uncomfortable to sit in the power. Like, it doesn't fit for everyone. So the way that I focus mediumship and the important things that I feel with mediumship is, if you can open up that to what could be possible to come through you. It could be the energy that I talk about. It could be that healing energy that, it may not look sexy on a transcript. It may not, feed that showmanship that is so important with spiritualism, but it's so important because that unseen energy is actually what brings through that healing. And to bring through that healing, you have to be so open. But if you're comparing yourself to this list, you can't be open. So the way that I bring balance is like we balance the evidence with wisdom, right? We balance it with wisdom. Like maybe it's not as transactional. Maybe there are more messages that come through. A very famous spiritualist saying is the evidence is the message. So they just want to give you like name dates and addresses and like move on. And I think that stuff is super cool to get. And I get that sometimes too. But what have they come to say? Like what wisdom do they bring from the other side? So it's kind of like just balancing that. And, I will say I love certain aspects of spiritualism too. Like there is this central, you know, healing that they want to do. Like whenever you go to a spiritual service online, it's like there's always like a healing first. And spiritual philosophy is also incredibly important to spiritualism. So I've taken away some really powerful things, but I know it's that checklist and I know it's that framework that makes so many of my students feel like not enough.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to hold space for these people so that they can see what space holding is and how people can thrive with good space holding, no matter what is going on in their lives. And, give them the sense of freedom to figure out how the spirit world wants them to serve, what kind of information they want to bring through from them, and be more open. And some people don't thrive under my way of doing it too. They want that structure. They want that framework. And they have that option as well. I'm just trying to offer a different way that is more rooted in the teachings of the natural world around us, the animal kin, the plant kin. There is teachings and mediumship in everything around us, and we just ignore it by trying to bypass to the spirit world. But they gave us this too for a reason. So it's just offering a bit of a different way.
I love that. And I think that applies to a lot of things. It's true also when you want to work with a healer or a therapist. There might be a therapist that's recommended by lots of people and it's just not working for you because you are different. It's like it's a frequency, like a color thing. You put blue and blue together, green and green together. If you put green and blue together, might make a nice color, but it's just not matching the same way.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's nobody wants to be robotic here, right? Especially because it is an art form and it is creative, but sometimes I feel like it's treated like scientific. And
Mm,
like science will take it so far and you'll be able to measure so much with empirical evidence. But the truth is, it's about the healing, it's about the connection, it's about the wisdom, it's about how do we like advance. And for that, we have to get out of a robotic way of like being, right?
yeah, it's a feminine journey. It's not like a science and facts masculine journey. It's more about, like you said, the heart and the healing that it brings.
Yeah. Or is there space for both?
Yeah. So for anyone that is listening and loving this conversation, maybe there are some women who are wondering, I think I might be a medium. I don't know. I'm feeling called by this path. Did you observe in your experience and in your clients certain signs or experiences that are kind of showing you, yes, you're led to walk this path?
Yeah, so I respond to this with mediumship is so uncommon that if you even know about it, that's a clue because I can walk into any conference, any room, one person will know about mediumship. Like honestly, like we know about it because we're immersed in the spiritual space,
Yeah.
but it is incredibly uncommon when we look at it from a global scale. Mediumship is more known than all the other modalities because we got Teresa Caputo, we got Tyler Henry, we got John Edwards, we got all these, it's like very visible, right?
Yeah.
So I think the first sign is that you are even aware of mediumship, that
Oh,
it is
interesting.
calling you. Like, and when
Yeah.
I look back at my path, that is definitely true for me. Like it's weird at 14. Like I read all of Sylvia Browne's books before I was 20, 42 books. That's not common,
No.
right? Did you watch, John Edwards crossing over after high school in the 90s? You're probably a medium. Truth is, all of us have the capacity for mediumship because all of us have equal access to the spirit world. It's just about awareness.
Mhm,
That
mhm.
is it,
Absolutely.
right? That's it. There's no secret sauce. And so it's about beliefs, awareness, and yeah, that's what I say. If you know about it, it's definitely worth exploring.
I love that. And it's true for us. It just feels like, well, yeah, of course there are mediums and we can all be mediums if we want to. Now, I did an energy healing training and I remember at the end of the training, she told me that I had mediumnic abilities and I was like, oh, wow, that's exciting and scary and I don't know. And now, of course, through the years, it's developed. And she told me at the time, there are some people who can connect with the energy and connect with the spirit world very naturally, and others they can do it because, well, we are spiritual beings and it's something that we can develop. But others, they just have that connection that is there right from the start. Is that something that you've also observed?
Okay, so in spiritualism, they call this, I was born a natural medium and I am not a natural medium. And it's always just like another way to like for the haves and the have-nots. And I hate that. So, I think it's about awareness. And at 31, I had been divorced, abused, homeless twice, addiction recovery. Like I had a lot to work through to become a clear channel.
Hmm.
Right? Whereas somebody who's 13 who comes into the path is probably going to be a bit more natural at it because they're clear because they're not unclear yet. Right. And I seen this with a well-known medium when they were like really young. It was like super, super clear. And you see them struggling a bit now because they've been knocked around by life a little bit. Right. And so it's just about being a clear channel. So I think that, whether it be people knocked around by life or oblivious by life or unbothered by life, like it's just so different for each and every one of us. And it's also our divine path and our divine timing, spirit is saying. So like not everyone is meant to be, I'm not a Beckham of mediumship. I can name some of the most impressive mediums in the world that you'll never hear about because they don't have a social presence. They're not interested in business, but they are rocking amazing work, just serving spirit. That's their path and they're booked and busy. They don't
Yeah.
need it.
Yeah.
Right? Spirit school is something I was meant to build because spirit wants more light in the space. So that's my mission. And I couldn't be prepared for that at 17 because I was like, why didn't I hop on this at 17? I actually had a chance. And they said, you wouldn't have been ready for this at
Yeah.
17. So a lot of it is just the divine timing. And I just want people to know if you hear anything out there that makes you feel or question, is this accessible to me? It's hoo-ha. And it's like almost designed to like make you feel not enough. That's what I am finding, and that's what I used to admire this very famous spiritual teacher. And he's one of the inspirers I bring through all the time, Gordon Higginson. And I would listen to his lectures and I would fall asleep with them under my pillow. And he was just so inspirational. And I loved his teaching style. And he would say things like, well, either you're a medium or you're not. And I can't help you if you're not a medium. And I remember thinking like, oh my God, what if I'm not?
Hmm.
Right. And I'm like, why do you even have to say that? Like, is that helpful?
No, it's not.
Right? Is that not creating like a disbelief? So I think that when we regurgitate old teachings without questioning them or like is this actually true? Does this actually make sense? A lot of those things actually don't make sense.
Yeah, using as discernment, right? It's so important.
Yeah, for sure. I'm like, why not just like believe it could be easy, right? I did that to one of my students actually at the Bespoke, where we saw each other and organized this. She was like, "Oh my God, like I've read for this person 3 times. Like, what else could I possibly bring through?" I'm like, just say to Spirit, only new information. Thanks.
Yeah.
That's it. And she did, and she was like, "Oh my God, I said it." And like, I'm like, could it not be that easy? Right? It's only our disbelief. It's only, and that's what Skylar said to me one day. The only limitation in your mediumship is what you believe you are capable of. That is it, right? That is it. So I try to teach it like, what if this was the easiest thing that you do,
Hmm.
right? And
I love
growing a
that so
business the
much.
size I have it, mediumship is the easiest thing I do.
Yeah. And it's really about, being that clear channel, like you were saying before, putting the ego to the side, the expectations to the side, the need to perform, the need to prove yourself. It's actually not about yourself. It's about allowing spirit to work
Mhm.
through you and serve through you. I mean, yeah, help others through you, really.
Yeah.
Um, I'm curious, in your understanding, what is the difference between a medium, a psychic, and a priestess? There are some overlaps in all these roles and some differences, but how do you see these?
Okay, so I can talk about psychic and medium, and then you might have to come in with the priestess because that's not something I know very much about, like in all clarity, but
Yeah.
the difference is the way that I explain it in the easiest way is everyone's psychic and medium because it's all energy and it's just intuition. That's it. But psychism is a two-way link. It's me and you. Mediumship is a three-way link. It's you, me, and spirit. That's it.
You, me, and spirit.
Yeah.
Okay.
So energetically, if I'm that crystal, I'm pulling energy from both sides. But when I'm in my psychic, I'm only pulling it from you. And my body knows because I'm sentient, like incredibly sentient. And so I can tell when I'm psychic or mediumship because I can tell where the information is coming from because I can feel it. I
Okay.
can feel the flow of energy. And so I'll be able to say like, I'm picking this up psychically, but I feel like this is something that you want. And as I'm tuning into the spirit world, I can tell that this is like grandma coming through. And so that's how I can tell the difference. Like for me, I've had different readers who are more clairvoyant say that there's a screen in their mind and they know based off of where things pop in the screen.
Hmm.
I've had a mentor say that they know psychic is in black and white and mediumship is in color. So
Oh,
it's like,
wow.
this is how come training is so important and why the list has to fucking go because, and I'm sorry I swear a lot, but because how cool is that? Why would we want to rob someone of their own intimate understanding of their language of spirit? So it's just about figuring out what it is for you. And that's what my program is. It's just like you do 20 practice readings in 2 months. By the end of that, you will know your energy.
Yeah.
You will get so many experiences that you'll have at least some clues, knowing that it's an unfoldment that will take your whole life, right?
Mhm.
There's no end game. So this is one of the things, there's no master mediums. I don't believe in certificates for it, to be honest with you, but I stay away from bureaucracy wherever I can. So
Yeah.
it's, I think it's just it's a way of being for all of us. And we're all connecting to the spirit world. And it's just around that awareness. Like when you realize spirit communication, your whole life is going to make sense. I promise you.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. I love that. Thank you so much. And I see how I never really heard that it described that way. So I love that explanation. And you know, through that lens, the priestess then is a psychic and a medium because she's being that clear channel, allowing spirit to work through her for the others. And she's also helping others through her psychic abilities and feeling others to hold space, to support them in the healing so that they can step into their divine self. So
Mhm.
it's, we're basically doing the same work, just a little bit differently.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Amazing.
Yes.
I would love a title like that. I don't know how that would fly for me, but I would love
You could call
that.
yourself a priestess, yeah. I mean,
It's always
often
so hard.
the priestess is also connected to, the priestess path, the beauty way, like sacred feminine spirituality. And in the end, we are all doing the same, which is remembering that we are the divine in human form and trying to act as much like it. But then it's just different modalities, different wordings, different paths.
Yeah, no, I love that. It would be interesting to see what that comes up in your astrology.
Hmm.
No, thank you for explaining that.
Well, thank you so much, Danielle, for being here. I feel like we could chat for another 5 hours, but we're gonna have to stop it here. If anyone wants to follow you, have a reading with you, work with you, you have Spirit School here in Squamish, and then you do readings online. Tell us about your Instagram, your website, and your offerings.
Yeah, thank you. So you can find me easily. I'm Squamish Medium everywhere. I mostly am on Instagram or my website or my online community called Spirit School. And most of my work is online training, membership, podcasting of the same name, but I have a headquarters here in Squamish where we do quarterly gatherings and different workshops. And all that can be found on my website, squamishmedium.com.
Amazing. Thank you so, so much for bringing your stories, your expertise, and your energy to the podcast.